Valeria Green had perfected the art of calculated distance. 3 months working in the Morale estate had taught her exactly how to navigate spaces without leaving impressions, how to deflect curiosity with rehearsed pleasantries, how to exist in the shadow of power without ever acknowledging what it could do to her. She kept her smile practiced, her history vague, and her skin covered. Always covered. Even now, in the relentless Miami heat of late August, she wore a lightweight cardigan over her tank top while she played with a 6-year-old girl by the sprawling infinity pool. Aria Morale squealed with delight as she chased iridescent bubbles across the limestone deck, her dark hair catching the afternoon sun with each bounce. She looked so much like the photographs Valeria had seen throughout the house, the elegant woman in silver frames who smiled from every corner, frozen in time 3 years ago. The same delicate features beginning to emerge even at her young age. The same expressive hazel eyes that could shift from mischievous to serious in a heartbeat. But where the photographs held grief, Aria radiated pure joy. "Watch me, Val. I can catch 3 at once," Aria called out, her small hands reaching skyward. Valeria smiled despite the perspiration beating at her temples. "I'm watching, sweetheart. You're getting so good at this." The girl spun in victory, arms spread wide like wings. "I'm the bubble champion." "You are," Valeria agreed, reaching for the bubble solution on the side table. "But champions need to reapply their sunscreen before we keep playing." Aria's expression shifted to one of theatrical devastation. "But we just put it on." "That was an hour ago, little love. Come here." They moved together toward the cushioned loungers where Maria, the housekeeper, had arranged fresh towels and refreshments. The older woman appeared at the patio door with a knowing smile, her sun-weathered face creasing with warmth. Maria was one of the few people on the estate who spoke to Valeria like she was more than just temporary help, someone who saw the person beneath the carefully constructed anonymity. Aria climbed onto the lounger and reached for her glass of lemonade, her movements enthusiastic and uncoordinated in the way only a 6-year-old could manage. Valeria saw it happening a split second before it did. Her hand moved forward instinctively, but she was just too slow. The glass tipped, sending a cascade of cold lemonade directly onto Valeria's chest and lap. The liquid soaked through the thin cardigan immediately, the cotton clinging to her skin like a second layer, and worse, the wet fabric became translucent, revealing the outline of what she'd spent 3 months hiding. Aria's eyes went wide with horror. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, Val. I didn't mean to. Please don't be mad at me." Valeria forced her voice to stay calm even as ice-cold panic gripped her throat. The wet cardigan stuck to her shoulders and arms, and she could feel the exposed skin beneath beginning to show through. She needed to get inside immediately. She needed to change before anyone else saw, before he saw. "It's okay, baby. Accidents happen," Valeria said, pulling the soaked cardigan tighter around herself even though the gesture was futile. "I just need to go change really quick, okay? I'm really, really sorry," Aria repeated, her voice small and guilty. "I know you are, and it's really fine. Stay here with Maria, and I'll be right back." Valeria stood carefully, holding the dripping fabric close to her body as she moved toward the French doors that led to the staff wing. The afternoon sun seemed impossibly bright, the limestone burning beneath her bare feet, every second feeling like an eternity as she crossed the open deck. She didn't see Ryan Morale step out of his office onto the upper terrace overlooking the pool. Didn't see him pause mid-conversation on his phone, his attention caught by movement below. Didn't see the exact moment his sharp eyes tracked her path across the deck, or the way his expression changed when the sun hit the wet fabric just right, revealing the unmistakable texture of scarred skin beneath. But she felt it. the weight of being observed, the prickling awareness that comes from being seen when you've spent months perfecting invisibility. Valeria quickened her pace, slipping through the French doors into the cool darkness of the house. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she hurried down the corridor toward her quarters, the wet cardigan leaving a trail of lemon-scented droplets on the marble floor. She didn't know that, on the terrace above, Ryan Morale had ended his phone call mid-sentence, that he was now standing completely still, his tattooed hands gripping the iron railing, his mind replaying what he'd just witnessed with the analytical precision of a man who'd spent 15 years reading threats in shadows. Those weren't ordinary scars. He'd seen enough violence in his life to recognize burn patterns, the distinctive texture of accelerant damage, the kind of deliberate injury that told a story of survival rather than accident. Valeria Green, the quiet nanny who'd appeared in his household 3 months ago, with impeccable references and practiced smiles, was running from something. Something that had marked her skin and taught her to hide in plain sight. By the time the sun set over Biscayne Bay, Ryan would make a call to Marcus, his head of security. By morning, he would know everything there was to know about the woman who'd brought his daughter back to life. Every secret she was hiding. Every lie she'd carefully constructed. Every reason she'd learned to perfect the art of calculated distance. Valeria Green's invisibility was about to end. She just didn't know it yet. A Mafia boss just discovered his nanny's dark secret, and by morning, her carefully hidden past will collide with his dangerous present. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Subscribe, so you don't miss what happens next when Ryan uncovers the truth about Valeria's scars and the deadly threat that followed her into his home. The morning light filtered through Ryan's office windows, casting long shadows across the mahogany desk where Marcus Chen stood with a manila folder that felt heavier than it should. Ryan hadn't slept. The image of those scars, deliberate, purposeful burn patterns that spoke of survival rather than accident, had replayed in his mind throughout the night like a warning he couldn't ignore. "Tell me what you found," Ryan said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of a man who'd built an empire on knowing when people were lying. Marcus opened the folder with practiced efficiency. Valeria Green exists. Social security number, driver's license, employment history, all legitimate on paper. The problem is what comes before. He laid out a timeline on the desk. 22 months ago, she appears fully formed. Perfect documentation, clean background check, references that hold up under standard verification. But dig deeper, and there's nothing. No childhood medical records, no school transcripts, no family connections, no digital footprint before June 2023. Ryan's jaw tightened. Witness protection. That would be my assessment, Marcus confirmed. The documentation is too good to be fake, but too clean to be real. Someone with federal resources created Valeria Green from nothing. The implications settled over Ryan like a lead weight. For 3 months, he'd watched this woman care for his daughter with genuine affection, watched Aria bloom under her attention in ways she hadn't since Claire died, and all of it had been built on a foundation of carefully constructed lies. "Where is she now?" Ryan asked. "In her quarters. Maria said she hasn't come out since the pool incident yesterday." Ryan stood, straightening his cuffs with deliberate movements. "Have her meet me in my office. Now." 15 minutes later, Valeria appeared in the doorway, wearing a long-sleeved blouse despite the Miami heat already building outside. Her blonde hair was pulled back severely, revealing the delicate bone structure of her face and the dark circles under her eyes that suggested she'd slept as poorly as he had. She looked fragile, standing there, But Ryan had learned long ago that fragile people didn't survive the kinds of injuries he'd glimpsed on her skin. "Mr. Morale," she said quietly, "you wanted to see me? Close the door and sit down." She did, moving with the careful precision of someone navigating a minefield. Her hands folded in her lap, fingers twisted together in a white-knuckled grip that betrayed her outward calm. Ryan slid the manila folder across the desk toward her. "Valeria Green, age 28, currently employed as a nanny in my household. Excellent references from a family in Atlanta. Clean background check. Driver's license issued in Florida 20 months ago. Would you like to know what's missing from this file?" She stared at the folder without touching it. "Mr. Morale, if this is about yesterday—" "Everything," he interrupted, his voice hardening. "Everything before June 2023 is missing. No childhood, no family, no history. You're a ghost, Miss Green, a very carefully constructed ghost." The color drained from her face. For a long moment she said nothing, and Ryan watched her internal calculation play out in real time. The decision between flight and truth, between maintaining the lie and acknowledging it was over. "I should resign," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll pack my things and be gone by this afternoon. I'm sorry for any deception." "You're not going anywhere." Ryan leaned forward, his dark eyes locked on hers. "Not until I know what you're running from and whether it can follow you here. Whether my daughter is in danger because I let you into our home." "Aria isn't in danger from me," Valeria said quickly, desperately. "I would never—" "Then tell me the truth." His voice carried an edge now, the tone that made grown men confess to crimes they'd spent years hiding. "Who are you, really? What happened to you? And why are you hiding in my house?" Valeria's composure cracked. Her hands trembled in her lap, and when she looked up at him, Ryan saw something he recognized too well. The expression of someone who'd survived what should have killed them and was still waiting for death to finish the job. "My real name is Valeria Cortez," she said, each word seeming to cost her something. "I'm in federal witness protection. 2 years ago, I was working as a surgical nurse at Jackson Memorial. One night, I stayed late to finish charting. I was walking to my car in the parking garage when I saw—" Her voice broke. "I saw Marco Calvetti execute a federal prosecutor. Shot him 3 times in the chest and left him bleeding out on the concrete." Ryan went very still. Marco Calvetti, heir to one of Miami's oldest crime families. Reckless, violent, and protected by enough money and political connections to make prosecution nearly impossible. The name alone explained everything. The fear, the hiding, the scars. "I called 911, Valeria continued, her words coming faster now, as if she needed to purge them before her courage failed. "I tried to help the prosecutor, but he died before the ambulance arrived. The FBI took my statement. They said I was their only witness, their only chance to put Marco away. 3 months later, 2 men broke into my apartment and set it on fire while I was sleeping. I got out through a window, but not before—" She stopped, her hand moving unconsciously to her shoulder. "The scars," Ryan said quietly. She nodded. "Accelerant burns. The marshals said it was the Calvettis sending a message. They put me in witness protection the next day. New name, new identity, new life. I've been Valeria Green ever since." Ryan absorbed this information with the calculating precision that had kept him alive, in his own dangerous world. "And now you're in my house, caring for my daughter, while the Calvetti family hunts you. They don't know where I am," Valeria said desperately. "The program is secure. I've followed every protocol." "Nothing is secure," Ryan interrupted. If I found holes in your background in one night, someone with enough money and motivation can find you, and the Calvettis have both. Valeria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Then, I'll leave. Today. I'll contact my handler and request relocation. You and Arya won't be involved. Sit down. The command in his voice stopped her mid-movement. She sank back into the chair, looking at him with a mixture of fear and confusion. Ryan stood, moving to the window that overlooked the pool where his daughter was already playing with Mariah, her laughter carrying on the morning breeze. Valeria had given that back to her, the ability to laugh without shadows. For 3 months, she'd been the first person since Claire's death to make Arya feel safe enough to be genuinely happy. "You're not leaving," Ryan said, his decision made. "Not yet, not until I know exactly what we're dealing with." For 72 hours, Valeria existed in a state of suspended anxiety, waiting for Ryan's verdict on her fate. She continued her duties with Arya, reading bedtime stories, preparing meals, supervising afternoon swims, but the ease between them had evaporated. Every time Ryan entered a room, Valeria felt the weight of his scrutiny, the constant assessment of a man deciding whether she was worth the risk she represented. Marcus became a ghost in her peripheral vision, his presence a reminder that Ryan's investigation hadn't stopped with her confession. She caught glimpses of him reviewing security footage, making quiet phone calls in corners of the estate, disappearing for hours at a time only to return with that same manila folder growing thicker with each passing day. On the third night, Maria found Valeria in the kitchen long after midnight, staring at cold coffee she hadn't bothered to drink. "He's not going to send you away," the housekeeper said, settling into the chair across from her with the familiarity of someone who'd earned the right to speak plainly. "You don't know that," Valeria replied. "I know him. I've worked in this house for 8 years, watched him bury his wife, watched him nearly destroy himself trying to be both parents to that little girl. You know what I haven't seen until you came?" Maria reached across the table, covering Valeria's hand with her weathered one. "I haven't seen him look at someone the way he looked at you when he thought you were leaving. Like losing you would cost him something he wasn't prepared to pay." Before Valeria could respond, Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Morale wants to see you, both of you." They found Ryan in his office, but this time Marcus and 2 other men Valeria recognized as his senior security team were present. The atmosphere was different. Not an interrogation, but a war council. A laptop sat open on the desk, displaying what looked like surveillance footage and document scans. Ryan's expression was grim as he gestured for them to enter. "Close the door. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room." Valeria's stomach dropped. Whatever Marcus had found, it was worse than she'd imagined. "We've been monitoring the Federal Witness Protection Program's database for any unusual activity related to your case," Marcus began, pulling up a series of encrypted files on his laptop. "3 weeks ago, someone accessed your file from inside the U.S. Marshals Service. Not your handler, someone else." The room tilted slightly. "That's impossible. The program has safeguards." "The program has a leak," Ryan interrupted, his voice cold with controlled fury. "A deputy marshal named Vincent Hayes has been feeding information to the Calvetti family for the past 4 years. We have financial records showing payments totaling over $2 million. He's sold out at least 7 witnesses that we can confirm." Valeria felt the blood drain from her face. "How long have they known where I am?" "At least 2 weeks, Marcus said, pulling up new surveillance footage. "These are from cameras we installed around the estate perimeter after the pool incident. Watch the timestamp. This was taken 5 days ago." The grainy image showed a black SUV with tinted windows parked on the street corner half a block from the estate's main gate. It sat there for 47 minutes according to the timestamp, long enough to photograph entry points, security patterns, shift changes. "There's more," Marcus continued, cycling through additional footage. "Different vehicles, different days, but the same pattern. They're conducting reconnaissance, building a picture of our defenses and routines." Valeria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I have to leave, tonight. If they know I'm here, if they're watching—" She turned to Ryan, her voice breaking. "Arya could be caught in the crossfire. I won't let that happen. I won't let my past destroy your family." "Sit down," Ryan said, his tone brooking no argument. "You don't understand what these people are capable of. I understand perfectly." Ryan moved around the desk, his presence filling the space between them. "The Calvetti family has been a thorn in my side for years. They traffic in human misery. They corrupt everything they touch, and Marco Calvetti is the worst of them. Impulsive, violent, convinced his family name makes him untouchable. But here's what you need to understand, Miss Cortez." He used her real name deliberately, an acknowledgement of the truth between them. "My household is not an easy target. My daughter is not defenseless, and I don't surrender what's mine to anyone, especially not to thugs who think fear is a strategy." "I'm not yours to protect," Valeria said quietly. Something shifted in Ryan's expression. A flash of emotion quickly controlled, but not before she saw it. "No? Then explain why my daughter asks for you first thing every morning. Why she sleeps through the night now without nightmares for the first time since her mother died. Why she laughs the way she used to before grief took that from her." He paused, his dark eyes holding hers. "And explain why the thought of you walking out that door and disappearing into another false identity makes me want to burn down everything the Calvettis have built." The silence that followed was deafening. Maria had gone very still in her chair. Marcus studied the floor with sudden intense interest. The other security personnel found reasons to examine their phones. "I'm not sending you back into a program that's already failed you," Ryan continued, his voice softening slightly. "I'm not letting you run again. We're going to handle this differently. Marcus, what's our security posture?" Marcus pulled up a schematic of the estate. "I've activated Protocol 7, increased perimeter surveillance, additional armed personnel on rotation, and I've reached out to our contacts in local law enforcement. If the Calvettis make a move, we'll know before they reach the property line." "That's not enough," Ryan said. "The Calvettis knowing her location changes everything. They'll be patient, wait for the right opportunity. We need to be proactive, not reactive." "What are you suggesting?" Valeria asked, though part of her already knew the answer from the determination in his voice. Ryan turned to face her fully, and in that moment she saw not just the powerful crime boss who controlled half of Miami's underworld, but the father who'd already lost one woman he cared about and was damned if he'd lose another. "I'm suggesting we stop playing defense. I'm suggesting we use my resources, my connections, and my reputation to make it very clear to the Calvetti family that touching you means starting a war they can't win. And I'm suggesting you trust me to keep you safe, because God help me, I'm not letting them take you." The attack came on a Tuesday morning, 3 days after Ryan had promised Valeria protection. The weather was perfect. Cloudless sky, gentle breeze off the bay, the kind of Miami morning that belonged in postcards. Arya's private school sat in Coral Gables, a prestigious institution where the children of diplomats and business magnates learned alongside the offspring of old money families. Security was supposed to be excellent. Ryan paid extra to ensure it. Marcus received the alert at 10:47 a.m. 2 men in maintenance uniforms had entered the school grounds through the service entrance, their credentials checking out in the system despite neither being on the scheduled work roster. The school's head of security noticed the discrepancy too late. By the time he flagged it, the men were already on campus, moving toward the elementary playground where Aria's class was having outdoor time. Ryan was in a meeting with his captains when Marcus burst through the door without knocking, his face ashen. "Sir, we have a situation at Aria's school. 2 unknown hostiles on campus, moving toward her location. I've got our team en route, but they're 8 minutes out." Ryan was already moving, his phone to his ear as he headed for the door. "Get me the school security office, now." To his captains, he barked orders without breaking stride. "Tony, coordinate with Marcus. Luca, get the helicopter ready. Move." The drive to Coral Gables should have taken 20 minutes. Ryan made it in 12, his armored SUV weaving through traffic with 2 additional vehicles flanking it. Marcus fed him updates through the phone the entire way, his voice tight with controlled urgency. "School security has eyes on them. They're near the playground now, one carrying what looks like a toolbox, the other has a messenger bag. Aria's teacher was alerted and moved the children inside, but—" Marcus paused, and Ryan's blood went cold at the silence. "Sir, one of the targets just pulled a weapon. They're attempting to breach the classroom." Ryan's knuckles went white on the phone. "Tell our team to engage the second they arrive. I don't care about collateral damage to property. Protect my daughter." "They're 2 minutes out. School security is establishing a perimeter, but they're not equipped for—" The sound of gunfire crackled through the phone line. "Shots fired. Our team is engaging." The SUV skidded into the school parking lot to find chaos. Parents were being evacuated from the main building. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. And in the far corner of the parking lot, near the maintenance entrance, Ryan's security team had 2 men pinned down behind a delivery van. The distinctive crack of gunfire echoed off the stucco buildings. Ryan was out of the vehicle before it fully stopped. Marcus and 2 armed guards immediately flanking him. "Where's my daughter?" "Safe room with her teacher and classmates," Marcus confirmed. "The classroom has reinforced doors. They didn't breach." One of the attackers made a desperate run for a motorcycle parked near the fence line. Ryan's lead security operative, a former Marine named Torres, dropped him with 2 shots before he made it 5 feet. The man crumpled to the asphalt, his weapon clattering away. The second attacker, realizing escape was impossible, raised his hands in surrender. The next hour was a blur of police statements, federal agents, and school administrators trying to understand how their campus had become a war zone. Ryan stood in the hallway outside the safe room, his hands shaking with an adrenaline crash he refused to show, waiting for clearance to see his daughter. When they finally opened the door, Aria ran to him with a sob that nearly broke him. He scooped her up, holding her so tightly she squeaked in protest, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo and feeling her heartbeat against his chest, alive, safe. But for how close had it been? "I was scared, Daddy," she whispered against his neck. "There were loud noises, and Miss Caroline made us hide in the dark room, and I wanted you." "I know, baby, I know. But you're safe now. I've got you." Over Aria's head, Ryan caught Marcus's eye. His head of security held up his phone, showing a text message from Torres. "Survivor is talking. Says they were hired to grab the girl, use her to draw out the nanny. Orders came from the Calvetti family." Ryan's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. They'd targeted his daughter, used a 6-year-old child as bait in their war against a witness they wanted dead. Whatever restraint he'd been showing, whatever political calculation had kept him from open warfare with the Calvettis, evaporated in that moment. By sunset, they were in the air. The helicopter lifted off from the estate's private helipad, carrying Ryan, Aria, Valeria, Maria, and a security team of 8 toward the Florida Keys. Ryan owned a compound there, a fortified property on a private island accessible only by boat or air, designed specifically for situations like this. It had been his contingency plan since Claire's death, the place he'd promised himself he'd retreat to if Miami ever became too dangerous for his daughter. Aria sat between Ryan and Valeria, holding both their hands, her earlier terror giving way to exhausted sleep as the helicopter's rhythmic thrum lulled her into unconsciousness. Valeria stared out the window at the darkening Atlantic, her face a mask of guilt so profound it was painful to witness. "This is my fault," she said quietly, barely audible over the helicopter noise. "They used her to get to me. That little girl nearly died because I—" "Stop." Ryan's voice cut through her self-recrimination. "They used her because they're desperate and vicious, because Marco Calvetti is exactly the monster you witnessed him being 2 years ago. This isn't on you. How can you say that? How can you still want me here after what almost happened?" Ryan looked down at his daughter sleeping between them, then back at Valeria. In the helicopter's dim interior lighting, he could see the tracks of tears on her face, the way her free hand trembled in her lap. "Because sending you away doesn't make Aria safer," he said. "The Calvettis know the connection now. Whether you're here or gone, they'll use that knowledge. The only difference is if you leave, you face them alone. And I'm not letting that happen." "Why?" The question came out broken. "Why are you doing this? I'm nobody to you, just a nanny you hired 3 months ago." Ryan was quiet for a long moment, watching the lights of the mainland recede behind them. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight of confession he hadn't intended to share. "My wife died because I couldn't protect her. She took a bullet meant for me during a business dispute that turned violent. I've spent 2 years telling myself I was poison to everyone I loved, that keeping distance kept people safe. Then you walked into our lives, and for the first time since Claire died, my daughter smiled like she meant it. You think I'm going to let the Calvettis take that from us? From her?" He paused. "From me?" Valeria met his eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. An acknowledgement of the shift that had occurred, the way employer and employee had transformed into something far more complicated and dangerous. "I won't let them hurt her again," Ryan continued, "which means I won't let them hurt you. That's not negotiable anymore." The compound appeared below them, lights glowing against the dark water like a beacon. As the helicopter descended toward the landing pad, Ryan made a decision that would change everything. The Calvettis wanted war. They were about to get one. The compound in the Keys became their fortress for the next 2 weeks. Ryan ran his business remotely from the secure communications room, while his security team transformed the property into an impenetrable stronghold. Aria adapted with the resilience of childhood, treating the relocation like an extended vacation, spending her days exploring tide pools with Valeria, and building sandcastles on their private beach under the watchful eyes of armed guards. But beneath the surface calm, Ryan was orchestrating something far more dangerous. He'd called in favors, activated networks that stretched from Miami to New York, and begun constructing a case against the Calvettis that would give federal prosecutors everything they needed. Not just Valeria's testimony about Marco's murder of the prosecutor, but a comprehensive dismantling of the family's entire criminal enterprise. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Vincent Hayes, the corrupt marshal who'd sold Valeria's location, had been under FBI surveillance for weeks. When agents finally moved to arrest him, he'd offered a deal: full cooperation in exchange for witness protection of his own. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Hayes gave us everything, Marcus reported during a secure video call with federal prosecutor Amanda Chen. Financial records, communication logs, details on every witness he compromised. The FBI wants Valeria to give preliminary testimony. They're prepared to move forward with charges against Marco Calvetti within the month. Ryan studied the prosecutor's face on the screen. Amanda Chen had a reputation for being brilliant and ruthless. Exactly the kind of attorney who could make charges stick against someone like Marco. What are the security arrangements? Federal building in downtown Miami. Controlled access, FBI security detail. Armored transport for Miss Cortez. We've done this hundreds of times, Mr. Morale. She'll be completely safe. Something in Ryan's gut twisted with unease, but the logic was sound. The testimony was the end game. The thing that would finally put Marco away and end the threat hanging over Valeria's head. Without it, they'd be running forever. That evening, he found Valeria on the compound's terrace, watching the sunset over the Gulf. The breeze caught her hair, and for the first time since he'd known her, she wore a sleeveless dress, her scars visible in the golden light. She'd stopped hiding them somewhere in the past 2 weeks, a transformation he'd witnessed with quiet admiration. "They want me to testify," she said without turning around. "Marcus told me about the FBI's offer." Ryan moved to stand beside her at the railing. "It's your decision. No one can force you." "But you think I should do it?" "I think Marco Calvetti belongs in prison for the rest of his life. I think you deserve to stop running, but I also think—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I think the system that failed you once is asking you to trust it again. And that's not a small thing." Valeria turned to face him, and in the fading light her eyes held a determination he hadn't seen before. "I'm tired of being afraid, tired of hiding. If testifying means I can finally reclaim my life, my real name, my future, then I'll do it. But I need to know you'll keep Aria safe while I'm gone. That's all that matters. Aria will be protected. You have my word." She smiled then, soft and sad. "You know what the worst part is? In another life, under different circumstances, maybe we could have—" She stopped, shaking her head. "Never mind, it doesn't matter." Ryan caught her hand before she could turn away, his fingers closing around hers with a gentleness that contradicted everything the world knew about him. "It matters to me." The confession hung between them, weighted with everything they hadn't said over the past weeks. The way he found excuses to be in whatever room she occupied. The way she watched him with Aria and saw not a dangerous crime boss but a devoted father trying his best. The way proximity and danger had stripped away pretense until all that remained was the raw truth. They'd become essential to each other. "When this is over," Ryan said quietly, "when Marco is behind bars and you're free, ask me again what matters." Valeria squeezed his hand, then pulled away, and they stood together watching darkness claim the sky while armed guards patrolled the compound perimeter, and the future waited like a held breath. The day of the testimony arrived with deceptive normality. Ryan had reviewed the security protocols personally, spoken directly with Amanda Chen and the FBI team leader, confirmed every detail of the transport route and building security. Valeria would be picked up at the compound at 0900 hours, transported via armored SUV with a 4-vehicle escort to the federal building, give her preliminary testimony, and return by 1500 hours. He kissed Aria goodbye that morning, watched her run off with Maria to collect seashells, then found Valeria in her room, dressed in a conservative navy suit that made her look like someone reclaiming professional identity after years of hiding. "You look strong," he told her. "I feel terrified." Good. Fear keeps you sharp. Trust your instincts. If anything feels wrong. I know. Marcus gave me the entire briefing. She picked up her purse, then set it down again, her hands shaking slightly. Ryan, if something happens, nothing will happen. But if it does, I need you to know, these past months being here with you and Arya, it's been the first time since that night in the parking garage that I've felt like myself again. Like I'm not just surviving, but actually living. Whatever happens today, thank you for giving me that. Ryan pulled her into his arms, feeling her tension gradually ease as she leaned into him. This isn't goodbye, Valeria. You're coming back, and when you do, we're going to figure out what this is between us without death threats and federal prosecutors hanging over our heads. She nodded against his chest, then pulled away, straightening her shoulders. Okay, let's do this. The convoy departed precisely on schedule. Ryan watched from the compound security center as the vehicles disappeared down the coastal road. Marcus coordinating with the FBI team via secure radio. Everything was proceeding according to plan. For exactly 43 minutes. Then Marcus's radio exploded with overlapping voices, the controlled chaos of a situation deteriorating rapidly. Ryan was on his feet instantly, his blood turning to ice as he heard the words that would haunt him. Ambush on the causeway, multiple hostiles, they're using... The transmission cut out, replaced by static and the distant sound of sustained gunfire. When Marcus's voice came back online 30 seconds later, it was devastated. Sir, the convoy was hit. Professional operation, multiple shooters. They had the route and timing. The FBI team is down. And Valeria... He paused, and Ryan's world stopped. They took her. The phone rang exactly 12 minutes after the ambush. Ryan answered on the first ring, his voice deadly calm despite the rage burning through his veins like acid. Marcus stood across the desk, coordinating with their teams throughout Miami, while Torres worked to track the call's origin. Every second mattered now. Mr. Morale. The voice was smooth, cultured, touched with the arrogance of old money and older sins. Vincent Calvetti, Marco's uncle and the family's true power. I apologize for the dramatic nature of our acquisition, but your Miss Cortez has proven remarkably difficult to reach through conventional channels. Where is she? Ryan's knuckles were white against the phone. Safe, for now. Uncomfortable, certainly. My nephew has strong feelings about witnesses who threaten his freedom, but alive. Which brings us to the purpose of this call. Vincent's tone shifted, becoming almost conversational. You're a businessman, Mr. Morale. You understand that sometimes problems require permanent solutions. Miss Cortez is a problem. Her testimony threatens my family's interests, but I'm prepared to offer you something rare in our world, a choice. Ryan said nothing, letting the silence stretch while Torres frantically triangulated the signal. The federal case relies entirely on her testimony, Vincent continued. Without her cooperation, the prosecutors have circumstantial evidence at best. So here's my offer. Convince Miss Cortez to recant, to claim coercion or misidentification, and she lives. We relocate her somewhere far from Miami, somewhere the federal government will never find her, and she gets to start over, again. You get your daughter's nanny back, we avoid an expensive legal battle, and everyone wins. And if I refuse? Then Marco finishes what he started 2 years ago, but this time there won't be a window to crawl through. No marshals to save her, just a slow, thorough end that erases the problem permanently. Vincent paused. You have 12 hours to decide. After that, my nephew's patience expires, and so does she. The line went dead. Torres looked up from his equipment, his face grim. Burner phone, probably already destroyed, but I got a general triangulation before he hung up. Industrial area near the port, about a 3-mile radius. Ryan was already moving, pulling up satellite imagery on his computer. Marcus, I want every contact we have in port security activated. Every camera feed, every guard on our payroll, every piece of intelligence we've gathered on Calvetti properties in that sector. And get me building schematics for anything they own or have connections to. Sir, if we move against them directly, we're starting a war that could consume... They started this war when they put my daughter in their crosshairs. Ryan's voice could have cut glass. Now, I'm going to finish it. Get me Antonio Russo on the phone. Marcus's eyes widened. Antonio Russo was the head of the commission, the collective body that maintained peace between Miami's various criminal organizations. Going to him meant escalating beyond a territorial dispute into something that would reshape the city's underworld. Sir, if you involved the commission... The Calvettis broke the most sacred rule. They targeted a child to get to their enemy. Antonio needs to know they're operating without honor or restraint. This isn't just about Valeria anymore. It's about establishing that some lines cannot be crossed. Within 2 hours, Ryan had assembled a tactical team of 23 men in the compound's operations center. Former special forces, private military contractors, and his most trusted soldiers, all of them volunteers who understood this mission might cost them everything. Satellite imagery covered the walls, showing every Calvetti-connected property in the Port District. Torres had narrowed the location to 4 possible buildings based on power consumption patterns and recent activity. We hit all 4 simultaneously, Ryan explained, his finger tracing routes on the map. Fast, coordinated, overwhelming force. They won't expect us to move this quickly or this hard. Marcus, you lead Team 2 here. Torres, Team 3 covers the warehouse district. Luca takes Team 4 to the shipping container facility. I'll handle the main compound. And if she's not in any of them? Marcus asked quietly. Then we make Vincent Calvetti tell us where she is. One way or another. Antonio Russo's response came through just before they deployed. The commission had voted unanimously. The Calvetti family's actions were deemed unconscionable. Ryan had their blessing to resolve the situation through any means necessary. More importantly, Russo guaranteed that no other families would interfere or seek retaliation. The Calvettis stood alone. The assault began at 0200 hours, coordinated down to the second. Ryan's team breached the main Calvetti compound on the port's eastern edge with shaped charges that turned reinforced doors into shrapnel. They moved through the building with brutal efficiency, clearing rooms and neutralizing guards who were too stunned by the speed and violence to mount effective resistance. Ryan found her in the basement, exactly where men like Marco always kept their victims, in a concrete room designed to muffle screams. She was handcuffed to a chair, her face bruised, her navy suit torn, but her eyes blazed with defiant fury when the door crashed open. Not broken, not defeated, survival incarnate. "About time," she said hoarsely as Ryan moved to free her. "I was starting to think you'd decided I wasn't worth the trouble." He cut through the zip ties binding her wrists with a knife that had already tasted blood that night. "Never think that again." Gunfire erupted above them. Marco's men mounting a counterattack. Ryan pulled Valeria behind him, his weapon tracking movement in the hallway as Torres appeared with 2 other operatives. "Building's almost clear, but we've got a problem," Torres said grimly. "Marco's barricaded himself in the second-floor office. He's got hostages, 2 of our guys who got separated during the breach." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Get Valeria to the extraction point. I'll handle Marco." "No." Valeria grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. He'll kill them the second you get close, but if I'm there, if he sees me, he'll want to finish this personally. Use me as bait. Absolutely not. Ryan. She turned him to face her, and in her eyes he saw not the frightened woman he'd interviewed in his office weeks ago, but someone who decided fear was no longer an acceptable way to live. I'm tired of running, tired of hiding. Let me help end this. Above them, an explosion rocked the building. Time was running out. Ryan made a calculation that went against every protective instinct screaming in his mind, but he understood what she was really asking. Not to be saved, but to be trusted as an equal partner in her own survival. Stay behind me, he ordered, and if I give you a weapon, you use it. They moved up the stairs together, Torres and his team providing cover, while Ryan and Valeria approached the barricaded office. Through the door, Marco's voice rang out, sharp with desperation. I know you're out there, Morale. You want your men back, you'll let me walk out of here, and you'll give me the witness. Ryan kicked the door open, his weapon trained on Marco, who stood behind an overturned desk with a gun pressed to one of the hostages' heads. But it was Valeria who spoke, stepping partially into Marco's view. It's over, Marco. The FBI has everything. Hayes's testimony, the financial records, witness statements from the others you tried to silence. Killing me doesn't make it go away. Marco's face contorted with rage. You should have died in that fire. You should have... He swung his weapon toward Valeria, and Ryan moved, but he was a fraction too slow. The shot never came from Marco's gun. Instead, Valeria caught the weapon Ryan had smoothly slid across the floor during Marco's distraction, raised it with hands that should have trembled but didn't, and fired twice. Both shots hit Marco's shoulder and upper chest, spinning him away from the hostages. He dropped, alive but disabled, his weapon clattering across the concrete floor. In the sudden silence that followed, Valeria lowered the gun, her entire body shaking now that the moment had passed. I'm not running anymore, she said quietly, as much to herself as to anyone else. FBI agents flooded the building minutes later, alerted by Antonio Russo's people that the situation had reached its conclusion. Marco Calvetti was taken into federal custody, his uncle Vincent arrested within the hour. The evidence Hayes had provided, combined with Valeria's testimony and the attempted kidnapping, would ensure both men spent the rest of their lives in prison. As dawn broke over Miami's port, Ryan found Valeria sitting on the compound's front steps, wrapped in a blanket someone had given her, watching emergency vehicles depart. He sat beside her without speaking, and she leaned into him, exhausted and traumatized, but fundamentally transformed. I killed someone, she whispered. Or I tried to. You saved lives, mine included. Does it always feel like this? Like you've crossed a line you can never uncross? Ryan thought of Claire, of every choice he'd made in his dangerous life, of the weight that came with survival. Yes, but that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human, and it makes you someone who fought back instead of accepting what they tried to make you. She nodded against his shoulder, and they sat together as the sun rose over a city that would never be the same. Two people who'd walked through fire and chosen each other on the other side. 6 months transformed everything in ways both profound and subtle. The legal machinery ground forward with inexorable precision. Marco Calvetti received life without parole for murder, conspiracy, and kidnapping. His uncle Vincent got 25 years for corruption and racketeering. Vincent Hayes, the corrupt marshal, turned state's witness and disappeared into his own protection program, his testimony dismantling what remained of the Calvetti organization's political connections. Valeria gave her final testimony in October, standing in federal court and recounting that night in the parking garage with a steadiness that came from knowing Marco could never hurt anyone again. When she walked out of the courthouse, Ryan was waiting, and they drove home together to the Morale estate where Aria had finger-painted a Welcome Home Val banner that still hung slightly crooked in the foyer. The Witness Protection Program officially closed Valeria Cortez's case in November. She reclaimed her identity piece by piece, her nursing license, her academic transcripts, her life before that terrible night 2 years ago. In January, she enrolled at the University of Miami's nursing program, returning to the dream that violence had interrupted. Her classmates knew her as Val, a slightly older student with unusual scars, and an intensity about patient care that came from understanding how quickly life could end. Ryan handled the political aftermath with characteristic precision. Antonio Russo and the commission recognized that the Calvetti family's recklessness had destabilized Miami's underworld. Ryan's decisive action, his willingness to risk everything for someone under his protection, earned him respect that translated into expanded influence. But more importantly, it earned him something he'd thought lost forever: proof that his power could protect rather than destroy, that loving someone didn't make them a target, but a reason to be stronger. On a warm April evening, Valeria returned to the estate after a particularly brutal clinical rotation in the emergency department. She found Ryan on the terrace where they'd stood that night before her testimony, back when the future felt like something that might not exist. Now, the future felt solid, real, full of possibilities that once seemed impossible. "Rough day?" he asked, handing her a glass of wine. 16-hour shift, 2 traumas, and a nursing instructor who thinks I don't understand sterile technique. She accepted the glass gratefully, kicking off her shoes and settling into the chair beside him. "How's Aria?" "Asleep. But not before informing me that she needs you to help her with the science project about butterfly metamorphosis. Apparently, I don't understand transformation properly." His slight smile suggested he found this assessment accurate. Valeria laughed, the sound carrying genuine joy. "She's not wrong. You're terrible at crafts. I'm a Mafia boss, not a kindergarten teacher. You're a father who hot-glued his fingers together trying to make a volcano last month. That was a tactical error, not a fundamental character flaw." They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that came from months of learning each other's rhythms. Valeria wore scrubs and exhaustion, her blonde hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her scars visible on her forearms in the fading light. She no longer dressed to hide them. Somewhere between testifying and surviving, she'd stopped seeing them as marks of victimhood and started understanding them as evidence of strength. She'd walked through fire and refused to burn. "I got my final grade in pathophysiology," she said, 94%. "Congratulations. Though I'm not surprised. I've seen you study. You approach nursing school the way I approach business negotiations. With excessive preparation and mild paranoia. With the understanding that competence keeps people alive." Valeria turned to look at him, really look at him in the golden hour light. Ryan Morale, 35 years old, powerful enough to reshape Miami's underworld with a phone call, sitting on his terrace discussing school grades and butterfly projects like they were the most important things in the world. Because to him, they were. She was. "I'm happy," she said quietly. "I didn't think I'd ever be able to say that again, but I am. Here, with you and Aria, building something real instead of hiding from shadows. It feels like a miracle." Ryan set down his glass and reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small velvet box that made Valeria's breath catch. He didn't drop to one knee, that wasn't who they were, and grand gestures felt wrong for something this essential. "I spent 2 years after Claire died believing I destroyed everything I touched," he said, opening the box to reveal a platinum band with a single diamond that caught the sunset like captured fire. That my world was too dangerous for love, that protecting people meant keeping distance. Then you walked into our lives pretending to be someone else, and you showed me something I'd forgotten, that strength isn't about isolation. It's about choosing who you'll fight for and never letting go. Valeria's eyes filled with tears she didn't bother hiding. You survived what should have killed you. You testified when it would have been easier to run. You shot a man to save my life and then had to live with what that meant. You're the strongest person I know, Valeria Cortez, and I don't want to spend another day without you being part of this family officially. He paused, holding her gaze. Marry me. Not because I saved you or you saved me, but because we saved each other. And I want to keep doing that for the rest of our lives. The answer came without hesitation. Yes? Ryan slipped the ring onto her finger, and she pulled him into a kiss that tasted like wine and relief, and the future they'd fought so hard to claim. When they finally pulled apart, Aria's voice drifted from the doorway. Does this mean Val's staying forever? They turned to find her standing there in her butterfly pajamas, Maria hovering behind her with an apologetic expression. Valeria held out her hand, and Aria ran to them, climbing into the space between them with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved. Forever sounds about right, Valeria said, wrapping her arm around the little girl who'd helped her remember how to laugh. Good, Aria said seriously, because I already told Emma at school you're going to be my mom, and it would be really embarrassing if I was wrong. Ryan caught Valeria's eye over Aria's head, and the look they shared contained everything. Grief for what they'd lost, gratitude for what they'd found, and hope for what they were building together. A family forged not from perfection, but from the willingness to be vulnerable, to trust, to choose each other despite the scars they carried. 3 months later, they married on the estate terrace at sunset with Aria as their flower girl and Antonio Russo as an unlikely witness. Valeria wore a sleeveless dress that showed her scars proudly, because they were part of her story but no longer the whole story. When Ryan slipped the wedding band onto her finger, she thought about the woman who'd hidden in long sleeves and careful distance, terrified of being seen. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, a nurse, a wife, a mother to a little girl who needed her, a survivor who'd learned that the opposite of hiding wasn't recklessness but courage, the courage to be known completely and loved anyway. As they danced their first dance while Aria twirled between them, Valeria caught her reflection in the terrace windows. For the first time in 3 years, she recognized the woman looking back. Not Valeria Green, the ghost with the fabricated past, but Valeria Cortez Morale, fully present and building a future worth surviving for. The scars remained, visible testimony to the fire she'd endured. But they no longer defined her. They were simply part of the map that had led her home,